Thank you so much. Good afternoon. It's very impressive. We all look happy, and we haven't lost a number of the people here. We're still intact. Yeah, now we are in session 5. It's the last, but not the least. And the theme for this session is sanitation in cities, including climate aspects. I will chair this session with Kim Anderson from Stockholm Environment Institute. I'm also Roshan from Osaka Water and Storage Company. So in terms of the first presentation, it's entitled UNICEF Global Framework for Urban Wash. And the presenter or the speaker is Bisi Agberemi from UNICEF. Bisi is UNICEF's water, sanitation and hygiene wash specialist for urban wash. He has over 30 years of experience in wash sector, both in development and humanitarian context, and has been involved in managing rural and urban wash programs in developing countries. He has been working for UNICEF for the past 18 years, and prior to coming to New York, he worked with UNICEF Nigeria and Bangladesh as a wash specialist. Prior to UNICEF, Bisi worked for private consulting firms in Nigeria and led the design and supervision of construction of water supply schemes for urban and small towns in the country. He is a fellow of Leadership for Environment and Development, LEAD member, Nigeria Society of Engineers, and member, Council for the Regulations of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. Let us all welcome Bisi.
Yeah, thank you so much. Greetings from UNICEF. And what I try to do, because of the short time, is just to tell us what UNICEF is doing in the area of urban wash. I'm sure most of us probably don't know UNICEF is having some activities in the urban area. We are predominantly known for rural, but just to say that we are so much engaged in the urban environment as well. All of us know this. I won't waste too much time on it. But just to point to the fact that everything we do in UNICEF is driven by evidence. And a lot of studies have actually shown that, yeah, a lot of things are working pretty well in urban areas, but there are still a lot of inequalities, which mostly we are ignoring. And that's one of the main factors why we are trying to get ourselves engaged in the urban wash. For us in UNICEF, I think it's so critical in terms of our mandate to see that we're going to get ourselves engaged in urban wash, and again, look at it from several perspectives, from human rights angle, from the issue of the core accountability of UNICEF, and of course, the imperative of SDGs and the humanitarian imperative, as well as the issue of public health. So all of us cannot ignore the fact that we have to put our hands together and make sure that we're going to focus, especially on those, my emphasis on those poorest of the poor families that are often left behind in terms of access, and that's where our focus majorly lies in UNICEF. In terms of our footprint, again, as I've said, we've been in this business for quite some time now. We do not know to most of us, but it's just to tell us that in more than 50 countries, UNICEF is implementing one form of urban wash program or the other, running from working in slums, small towns, and even cities. Again, in humanitarian settings. UNICEF is known for this, and of course, it cuts across majorly in Africa, Asia, and some other parts of the world. And of course, most of the urban wash program are still in development, while about 40% is humanitarian. So it's good to bring this out very well. So just to show us the landscape of what we're talking about. And in terms of the scope, again, it varies again from $20,000 campaign project to about $45 million project in Ethiopia or something like that. So just a very wide range of interventions we are engaging. Now, I will spend more time on the framework itself and what takes us to the issue of having a framework. We've been having some form of engagement for the past 10 years in urban wash, but again, we don't really have something that put all of us together as UNICEF to hold on to. And that's where we've gone to the fact of developing a framework. And for us to have the framework, it has to go through a lot of processes, engagement, including both within UNICEF and outside UNICEF, and it's evidence-based. Again, building on what we love doing, building on our core accountability, building on our experiences. So it's not just checklist or list of things we think we could do. These are things we've been doing, and it's just a way of putting everything together in a document for us to agree as an organization. So, okay, fine. These are areas we have the strength in, and these are areas we have to go, and this is what we can do. So this just, again, show the processes and how we came about the framework. And this is the framework itself. This is what we have that governs our intervention in the area of urban wash. And of course, it goes from, starting from the vision of UNICEF to the strategy we have on wash, of course, to our overall objective in the wash area. But I'll spend a little time on the urban context and support type. Again, based on what I said earlier, based on evidence, and these are areas we know we have the strength. And then working in the urban slums, working in small towns, and of course, the urban areas in humanitarian and protected crisis settings. And in terms of support, we've categorized them in three again, working from the sector perspective, looking at the overarching picture of the sector, national level, sector-wide approach, making sure that the enabling, I'll come to the issue of the type of programming approaches, and coming back to service level support and user level support. And again, everything we do aligns, they align with all our in-house documents to make sure we have a very strong enabling environment for urban wash. And of course, this keeps very well with the sanitation and water for building blocks of having policy, institutional arrangement, sector financing, capacity development and planning, monitoring and review. Then it takes us to service level, looking at the mechanism and system for ensuring service delivery in urban areas with focus on inclusiveness of our interventions. That's what we're having, because again, there are a lot of actors, bigger actors working in the urban areas, but what we're trying to do is just to close the gap, to look at those that are not being reached and make sure we have some appropriate interventions to reach this level of people. Of course, the user level support is about accountability, most to say, to empower the users to request or to demand for accountability from service providers, and this is what the whole framework is all about. And if we look at each of these levels, there are a lot of priority interventions in which UNICEF is engaged on. So it's a framework that governs what we do in UNICEF. And I've said quite a lot of these are already in implementation, because we have more than 50 countries already doing one form of urban wash program or the other. So it's extremely very important. The whole thing just to put everything together in a framework, and all of us can key into it. We can know what we are doing, why we are doing it, and how we are doing it. So now, I've talked about the framework itself. I've been a little bit just to make sure that I keep to the time. But the one other thing about the framework is just the issue of ensuring that the question that does UNICEF have capacity to implement this framework? Of course, as part of the processes of developing the framework, we did a capacity assessment and mapping of our strengths in these areas. And we found that there are actually a lot of in-house capacity. Having said that, we identified the gap as well, which we are already working towards. At the same time, too, we did a very comprehensive urban wash stakeholder analysis and mapping to check who are the stakeholders that are doing one form of urban wash intervention or the others. Based on that, again, we have a report that further govern the development of this framework. So this development is more of building from all the analysis and evidence that we have. So in terms of moving forward, of course, is to put this framework in operationalization to make sure that all UNICEF country offices and regional offices key into it. More so, the framework is very, very generic. Each regional office, country office are supposed to adopt, localize it to suit their own local context. And of course, we take it further from there. And of course, I talk about capacity assessment based on what we've done is to now start building our capacity based on the gap to make sure that we have in-house expertise to implement the framework. We're just discussing this afternoon the issue of further evidence again, because everything should be based on evidence. And one of the things we intend doing, working with GMP team, is to have a snapshot on global and regional analysis of urban wash inequalities. This, again, is extremely very important, and this will help us to systematically program urban wash interventions based on inequalities. Because to me, that's just the language now, because we know that we have quite a lot of resources in the urban wash. Most of them are infrastructure-based. Some people are being left out, but if we have enough evidence, that will really help us to program. Of course, based on that snapshot, we can do our mapping and identification of priority countries for urban wash. Of course, we have quite a lot of models that have been successful. We're going to scale that up. And of course, the last but not the least is to continue the resource mobilization and fundraising for capacity development and scaling up. So this, in a nutshell, just gives what we are doing, what we hope to do in the area of urban wash from a UNICEF perspective. And because of time limits, we don't really have much time to expand so much on this. But since we are going to be here for the next couple of days, if you are so much interested, we can have some bilateral talks and we can throw more lights on what we can do and what we cannot do. Thank you so much.
So maybe whilst they're setting up, we'll move on to the next presentation. It's a joint presentation. This particular one will take 15 minutes. And the topic is Citywide Inclusive Sanitation. Introduction and examples from Eawag. And the first presenter is Abishek Narayan from Eawag-Sandec. And the second component is Citywide Inclusive Sanitation, from technology innovation to the planning of sustainable sanitation systems. And this part will be presented by Dorothee Spuhler, also from Eawag-Sandec. Abishek is currently pursuing his PhD at Eawag and ETH Zurich on planning for CWIS. He has a background in engineering and policy, which makes life both easy and hard for him in making the two ends meet. But he enjoys the challenge since he believes that that's where a lot of solutions lie. As for Dorothee, she holds an MSc in environmental engineering. She has over 12 years of experience in project development and management in the field of sustainable sanitation and water management in Switzerland, Southeast Asia, and Africa, both as a private consultant and as an academic. Her main competence is innovation for sustainable development, including technology, that's resource recovery and reuse, circular and decentralized systems, capacity development, and strategic sanitation planning. Dorothee is the main developer of www.sswm.info, the most comprehensive open source capacity development platform for water and sanitation worldwide, and has managed this platform from 2010 to 2014. Dorothee believes in trans and interdisciplinarity and capacity development as a key driver for sustainable development, and therefore, these transversal methods can be found in almost all of our projects. We now welcome the two to do the presentation. Thank you.
Takes 2 seconds.
Hello. Okay, I think I'm audible. Hi, everyone. So, in keeping with the theme of the day of raising hands, how many of you have heard of this term right there, Citywide Inclusive Sanitation? Fantastic. That makes my job so much easier. So, I'm going to give you a very quick insight as to what is Citywide Inclusive Sanitation, what is the history behind it, what's the most recent updates, and what are we doing at Eawag. So, I will not preach to the grand choir that is here, but I want to highlight as to why there is a need for a paradigm shift that is happening. Number one is I will throw light on, there is often lighthouses of great examples of successful projects, but replicability is often an issue. And then the other one is we often look at certain parts of the value chain and don't account for local knowledge and things like that. So there are a host of problems which this new paradigm shift wants to address. So I'm sure many of you stayed for Rick's presentation, and he would agree when I say that achieving SDG 6.2 is getting harder. In that graph that he showed, there seems to be that not so many people are on the track. So we understand that we need to do something, and at the start there were quite a few organizations which found common ground to say we have to unite our efforts on achieving urban sanitation goals. There are few logos here, but that list is ever expanding. And the nice thing about CWIS is it's all welcoming, it's collaborative, and not competing. So in terms of the timeline, what quickly happened was in 2016, that's not very far from now, there was a conception at the Atlanta conference, and then soon we released the call for action at the Stockholm Water Week, and then when Jim Kim and Bill Gates met, they announced this big announcement which said $1 billion worth of investment potential can be unlocked to achieve CWIS. So there is quite a lot of things that have been promised, and the most recent update, which is also the most important one, is there have been principles that have been formed, which is not finalized, it's still working. So we want feedback on that, which is what the working group on cities will do in the coming week on Wednesday. So if we say CWIS, what does CWIS mean? There's a monstrous definition, working definition that we've kind of put, which says, hey, it's a state of urban sanitation which tries to achieve affordable, equitable sanitation for all members, using both centralized and decentralized systems without any leaks into the environment. So yes, a lot of words out there, right? I'm sure you have some comments on this right when the first time that you saw it, which is why you should attend the workshop, because we are actually looking for feedback to understand, hey, it's not just a bunch of organizations doing it, it has to be a united sectoral effort. And the principles very quickly is, it talks about equity, special focus on gender, resource recovery considerations, long-term planning, political will. Like, a lot of things we've all spoken about in isolation. And now this is trying to put everything together. So in simple words, what happened about a decade ago for water security, I'm sure a lot of academics and others who have been working in the water sector know that this sort of paradigm shift happened about a decade ago for water security. And something, if I have to simplify oversimplistically, it means CWIS comes within public health and environmental health. So the most repeated question, the common question I get asked is, all right, Abishek, CWIS, great. What is new? You're just saying what happens in 1980, what Karl Martin said. You're just putting it new words. But then is it just old wine in a new bottle? No, because there are two really important differences which make this unique and which make the chances of this being successful quite high. And that is, equity has been considered as the centerpiece of CWIS. And the second is, it's a united effort. So even today, we happen to be making this presentation, but tomorrow we are hoping that you are embracing this in your own projects and then telling us how that goes. So at Eawag, one of the things that we were trying to do is, about 20 years ago, a similar thing happened on sustainable sanitation at Bellagio, which then led way to one of the urban sanitation frameworks that happened, which is CLUES. And now, based on the Manila principles, we are now developing something called the bridged approach, which is my PhD, basically. A side note there. Finally, at Eawag, we are doing a lot of things, but very quickly to mention, the biggest work that we're doing is capacity development using through a project called Cont'd, where we are doing open resource materials, which aim at blended learning, where the partner institutes actually take this, contextualize it, and then make it sustainable business model for all consultants who are working in these respective countries. We have case studies, frameworks, etc. And quickly, I will touch upon that we are testing the World Bank's costing tool for CWIS in several cities. We are doing SFDs, and then we have developed this new social network analysis to understand institutional wash in different cities. And now I'm going to let Dorothee take over to talk about the last one there on Santiago, which helps generate different alternate sanitation options. Thank you.
So we know since 40 years that we need strategic sanitation planning approaches, considering not only technical aspects, but also institutional, social, and managerial and that provide appropriate options and that allow for incremental approaches. And the last example of specifying these principles is CWIS. But despite that, in reality, many projects are still top-down, technology-driven, one-time master planning exercises, leading to failing projects. The situation is very difficult mainly in high-density urban areas where conventional centralized solutions are not appropriate, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations and many others are therefore investing in technology innovations that are more appropriate and potentially more sustainable. But more technology options also means that the planning process becomes more complex. How can these technologies be assembled in entire systems, and how can we assess their appropriateness of these systems in different urban contexts? So these questions actually are becoming increasingly relevant. Structured decision-making frameworks, as I call that, city sanitation plans, CLUES, Sanitation 21, you name it, they are part of the answer. And to operationalize those, many actors are developing tools. CLTS FOSS can be used for the launch. The shit flow diagrams and other diagnostic tools helps to understand the current decision context. The definition of the sustainable sanitation criteria can be used to guide the planning overall decision objectives. Life cycle costing or life cycle analysis, material flow analysis help to further evaluate different options and compare them. And MCDA multi-criteria decision analysis tool, such as developed by the Samsung thing, Manfred is not here, they can help to evaluate options, discuss trade-offs and select the preferred one. But any selected sanitation system option will only be as good, as appropriate as the options that you investigate. And there is this the thing. So how can we consider the growing number of technology options when providing different sanitation system options to the decision context? Actually, from 40 technologies in the compendium, you could generate 100,000 different systems. So you can't really manage this manually, and you need some support. That's why I've been working on developing Santiago, which is a software that provides a diverse set of sanitation system options, but which is of manageable size, and all are appropriate for a given context. So it needs two inputs: screening criteria derived from the overall decision objectives and the evaluation of the local conditions in relation to these criteria. The potential technology options can be taken from a technology library based on the compendium and characterizing them by their different appropriateness profiles. And useful for screening are criteria that are independent from stakeholders, such kind of hard facts, settlement density, groundwater table, and so on. Then the technology profiles are compared to the case profiles to identify appropriate technology options. Entire sanitation systems are generated, and a set of appropriate but diverse set of systems is selected, and the diversity is defined by the system templates from the compendium. This set is then feedback to the decision-making process. Optionally, mass flows are quantified in order to evaluate resource recovery potentials, emissions to the environment, or costs. So actually, it has been field tested and both scientifically validated, and there are many reasons. This is an example from Nepal, 4,000 people. We identified a set of 17 sanitation system options, which included both systems that are already constructed, pit latrines, pro-flush latrines connected to biogas reactors, but also novel options which nobody has thought of before, which includes urine diversion and vermicomposting. Another example, bigger city, 100,000 people, Ethiopia. We did the same process and identified different options for the different urban settlements, slum, peri-urban areas, and so on. So there are many reasons why I think there are some advantages of this tool. One main reason is that you can consider very large and very broad number of technologies. The other reason is that you provide international literature and expert data to the local context, and uncertainties are considered, so you can apply it already at a pre-planning phase. So actually we're currently in the process of making it available online. The idea is to have also a training package in order to enable practitioners to use it. And such a tool could then be applied to identify technical options for the planning process together with other tools. It could also be applied to develop local catalogs of appropriate systems for different urban contexts. Or you could assess the potential appropriateness of technology innovations already at the development stage. So the questions I have today for you is actually, do we need something like that? And also, how should it look like? And where should it be hosted? Should it be hosted at the Eawag page, the FSM toolbox? Should it be hosted at the SSWN toolbox or the SuSanA web page? So you will, you will not be able to answer it now, but you can write me an email.
Thank you so much. I think whilst they're setting up, we'll introduce the next presenter, or the next speaker. She's our Diagne from the World Bank, and she'll make a presentation on CWIS in World Bank financed project. Awa started her career at the World Bank, working primarily on water supply and sanitation in the Latin America and Caribbean region. She later worked for the Senegalese Water Company before returning to the bank as a young professional in the water global practice, working primarily in Africa. She's an environmental engineer by training and holds a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and a master's degree in civil and environmental engineering with a focus on water quality engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Let us welcome Awa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the work we've been doing at the World Bank on citywide inclusive sanitation in our projects. So I'm not going to go over the definition of what CWIS is. I think Abishek did a great job. But as he mentioned, we have these principles that we've discussed among the partners, and we've tried to roll them out among our bank projects, and some of those are, as you know, the consideration for the entire service chain, also looking at a mix of solutions, whether they're on-site or seaward, thinking about the long-term planning, thinking about other urban services like drainage and water supply or solid waste management. It's a lot of things on one slide, but basically we're doing a lot of things. We're helping task teams on one side on preparing projects, but also implementing them. And also, on the other hand, we're trying to produce knowledge that can be implemented in those projects. For instance, we've developed guides like the Shared and Public Sanitation, Shared and Public Toilets Guide. We're in the process of developing a guide on connecting the unconnected to sewers. Also, we've had these series of videos that some of you may know on YouTube on the good practices of urban sanitation worldwide, which have been translated in French and Spanish. We also recently rolled out the beta version of the costing and planning tool that has been tested in some of our countries, and also we're hoping that more people will test it and provide feedback before we roll it out. We're also developing generic terms of references, and some of them are available on the bank website. And also our idea also is for task teams to come to us if they need technical expertise that we can find either within our team at the bottom or externally. I'm the latest addition to the team that is led by Martin Gambro, that most of you know, under the supervision of our practice manager, Mariangelica Sotomayor. And I've noticed that ever since I told them that I hate public speaking, they've been volunteering me to do presentations. But yeah, great team to work with. So we've also noticed a lot of appetite on CWIS from our bank colleagues, even if it was a long learning curve. So we've been asked to help with project preparations and implementation in these countries. The map is a bit outdated. We're in the process of updating it, where we've had recently been engaged in the DRC, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Morocco, and in Yemen. And I think also some other teams have been asking us to help them with project preparation, so stay tuned. I couldn't go for 10 minutes over everything that we're doing in those countries, so I'm going to talk about only 4 countries. In Kenya, we have tweaked a bit our process, because the idea is that planning is done at the county level. So we have what we call their county-wide inclusive sanitation. And the government has asked to help one county in particular to roll out sanitation master planning, and also get to know how to do the costing for different sanitation services. Also, the idea there was also to do a clear mapping of all the institutions that are involved, and also their roles and regulations. In Bolivia, similar support on how to advance the urban sanitation agenda. We've helped with CWIS strategic planning, but also how to improve fecal sludge management, also how to look at all the technical implications, social implications of connecting the unconnected to existing sewers. In Ethiopia, which is one of our largest urban sanitation projects of almost $500 million, to expand sanitation coverage in 22 cities, secondary cities, and also Addis Ababa. The government has asked to help them and the consulting firms to better plan for sanitation. Also, service providers in these 22 secondary towns have recently received a mandate for urban sanitation, which they're not very familiar with. So we've been trying during this project implementation to support their capacity building. The CWIS planning, costing and planning tool has been also applied in Ethiopia to try to show them the implications of the financial implications of having different types of solutions in the city. And Gustavo is here. He's the one that developed it, and probably if you have questions, he'll be able to answer more. And then in Bangladesh, which is one of our most recent internal clients, the teams have asked to help them in the preparation of the Dhaka sanitation project, and also a municipal project in 30 small towns. Same thing, try to see how the local governments can think about different types of solutions that make sense in their cities, while looking also at FSM. One thing we've noticed at the bank is that it's really hard to make people change their mindset. So this mindset shift is something we have to constantly do. So we're constantly having these knowledge and learning events, whether at the project level or at the regional level, to continue advocacy with governments and service providers, but also our teams, but also build capacity of what CWIS means. And the next one will be in Uganda in November for the English and Portuguese-speaking countries of Africa. We're also planning another one in the spring for Francophone African countries, and another one in Nigeria next spring in collaboration with WaterAid. And talking about collaboration is something that has really helped us move this agenda forward. We can't do it without our partners that Abishek mentioned, and we're always constantly also looking for partners. So I'll be here till the 30th. Come talk to me about the exciting work we're planning this fiscal year and how you can also help. We have developed a brochure about the work we're doing, so everything in the presentation is in the brochure. I have some copies, but also stop by our booth during the week to pick up a copy. Thank you so much.
I will now hand over the chairmanship to Kim to chair the rest of the session. Kim, thank you.
Thanks, Wilson. So our next speaker will try to make sense of urban sanitation in 20 cities, and I have the pleasure to invite Antoinette Komé to the stage, and she's one of SMB's 2 global sector coordinators in water, sanitation, hygiene, and she's been with SMB for more than 20 years. She's experienced working in Latin America, in Asia before she became this global sector coordinator. He's also worked before SMB in Senegal and Sri Lanka. She's from Netherlands and has a master degree in tropical land use and irrigation from the Wageningen Agricultural University. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So this is a bit of a challenge. Do I have a pointer?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm trying to make sense of 20 cities, and that's a lot at the end of a very full day. And I put way too much in this presentation, so apologies in advance. Okay, so it's a program across 5 countries, 20 cities, starting in 2014, Bangladesh, Nepal, Indonesia. I wouldn't call it CWIS, but there are 3 cities that are now officially called CWIS. And of course in Tanzania and Zambia, whereas in Kenya it's mostly focused on reuse, so I'm not really counting that. So we call it Urban Sanitation and Hygiene for Health and Development. We were not very good at making a nice acronym, but these are the elements that we want to work on for inclusive sanitation for all. So it's around wash governance and regulations, it's around sanitation demands creation and behavior change, it's around services, on-site, off-site services, informed choice, like what Dorothee was talking about, the importance of really having an information about the type of technologies that are chosen in sanitation, and of course the multi-million-dollar question of understanding the finance around it. So what do we mean with citywide? This was before principles, but I think it aligns very much. We were thinking across the sanitation value chain. It doesn't matter which technology that is. We thought for all people and reaching spatially all parts of the city. So what did we think about in terms of service models? We thought, okay, cities have a service model and it consists of different pieces of the puzzle. So there may be a user interface containments here, sanitation value chain, and in the city center this may be a sewerage utility, a sewerage line. But in other areas there may be other stakeholders who are providing those services, and those systems, those different systems in those different areas, they need to fit into each other as a piece of the puzzle. Because for some time we had quite some discussion about, yes, sewer, oh no, yes, FSM, and let's fight that. But ultimately we just want to see that puzzle, and we want to make sure that everybody has safely managed sanitation. So that is the puzzle we're trying to make. So what type of change we want to see? When we started measuring that change in the program in Bangladesh and Nepal, this was along the sanitation value chain, and then looking at hand washing, menstrual hygiene, and premise level solid waste. Premise level solid waste, when we moved to Africa, became much more important because of all the solid waste that goes into pits. Of course, across household, schools, healthcare facilities and public places. But we also want to see changes in capacities. So capacities of local governments, utilities, private sector and civil society organizations. What we don't want to see, we don't want to see just technology optimism. Everything is going to be fixed by technology. We don't want to see just business optimism. Everything is going to happen with the private sector. Or government optimism. We have quite a number of government partners who have a lot of government optimism. Everything can be done by government alone. We don't want just civil society optimism. Everything will be better if it's all bottom up and by people themselves. We do want to see optimism. And we want to see strategic thinking. So we want a holistic approach to strategic thinking and not go on one single thread of mind from the beginning. So if I move into these different components that we've been working on, I was trying to share a little bit what type of activities have we been doing and what have we been learning, which is of course way too much to share here. But luckily we have a partnership with ISF and Juliette is sitting there. I gave her a lot of headaches to write down a lot of thinking that we developed together. So WASH governance regulation is our first component that really a first component that's really the basis. And as Awa also said, starting from understanding roles and responsibilities and the whole legal framework around it. Very often on-site sanitation is not in there, just off-site sanitation, and nobody wants to take responsibility. It's like a tennis or baseball game throwing around. We were not promoting big planning exercises because sometimes they take very long and not always there's enough knowledge and energy to do this very well. We did make a presentation around that, you can read about it, but the objective was what can we do in the beginning to integrate in existing planning and then over time evolve. Another thing which is very important is around data management, of course, enforcement, regulation enforcement, not think everything can be fixed by awareness, to move away from treatment plant thinking. So in Indonesia, especially, many cities think if I have a treatment plant, then it will start working. And I now see that again also in the other cities. And the treatment plant by itself will not make it work. So a second component is around behavior change, communication and awareness. And yes, it was told there were very few people sitting here in behavior change. But I also want the people working on behavior change to move beyond hand washing and beyond hygiene. Because when you talk about urban sanitation, there are so many behaviors that require a clever behavior change communication strategy. Yeah, not just education. We see utilities, they just do education, like your mother-in-law. You have to do this, you have to do that. But clever communication is really looking at what are the drivers. So doing formative research around timely emptying, about solid waste, about functional Y junctions, but also all the occupational health and safety and adherence to protocols is a behavior issue in a certain extent. Yeah, so that's why it's we work on formative research. This is from Tanzania from last year. And of course, building capacity of the different responsible government parties to work on behavior change. Safe and affordable services is a huge thing because it's not just talking about construction of toilets, it's also talking about maintenance, and when you're talking about public toilets, it's a service around management of those public toilets, and it can also be, of course, the whole reuse chain. And the big trick is who pays what, how, and where, and how do we create demand for timely emptying. So what I want to say mainly here is that we need private sector and work with private sector, but we need to be prepared to provide quite a lot of hand-holding to that private sector. And here are a few of the publications. Treatment, disposal and reuse. I want to say to this group, reuse is not going to save the day. As much as we would love it, reuse is not generating that saving amount of money. It's a nice additional thing to do, but we need to have the core ready first. We've worked on a number of things, and co-composting plants, the wetlands, drylands, briquettes from fecal sludge. Issue also is whether there's a market for those reuse products. And last but not least, smart finance and investment. And because I liked the phrase, again, blended finance is also not going to save the day. Because the foundations need to be there, and very often public money needs to be there. So what about climate change? I have to wrap up. This is my last slide. The thing I want to say about climate change is that we should not think that now in this sector, which is in its infancy, that we're going to do everything different in terms of climate change. Climate change means basically to start thinking about what is the horizon of, what is the lifespan of the different services that we have, and how do we make sure that these services keep on working. And we haven't been doing that in sanitation because we have thought very much about treatment plants and ODF, to put it simply. And just thinking about that longer lifespan and what it takes to keep service going, that would address climate change issues. And we do have a publication on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Antoinette, for this, keeping the energy in the room and for a very inspiring presentation. Now all these nice concepts and methods on urban sanitation, we want to go dig deep into a more on-the-ground case from Lusaka in Zambia. And so we will present Dennis here, Malambo. He's the Director of Commercial Services at the Lusaka Water and Sewerage Company, a utility which provides water and sanitation services to the capital city of Zambia and the entire province of Lusaka. He holds a Master of Science degree in Municipal Water and Infrastructure from IHE in Delft, in the Netherlands, and is currently an Edinburgh Business School participant pursuing his MBA. So he has worked with the water sector for the past 14 years and was involved in a number of peri-urban water and sanitation projects implemented in Lusaka city. And he currently heads the commercial division of the utility. So please welcome Dennis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello? It's working? Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'll pick it up from where Antoinette left it. And obviously, from my perspective, it should have been the first slide that obviously she should have talked about. But in any case, I think my presentation really will try and center around issues around climate change. I come from a water utility that services the capital city of Lusaka. And like was indicated, I've been around for the past 14 years. And when I began my career in the water sector, really issues of climate change were things, we could just talk about, but really we're not experiencing them. But I think we've come to a point where we are actually getting to experience the effects of climate change. And I think it's a subject that we can no longer just put aside. I think it's a subject that we need to deal with. And obviously, as we look at solutions to the water and sanitation sector, I think issues around climate change should come to the fore, and we really need to think about them. So basically, my presentation really will center around some work that we've recently been doing with GIZ in Lusaka. And obviously, it's around a tool that is called ECAM. that we thought, now that we really need to start thinking about climate change, it's something that we really need to do. And we thought, these two came in handy really as we look at the baseline to see exactly where we are, so that even as we are mapping out any future interventions, really we should have these considerations taken into effect. So I'll quickly just run through this slide. I think these are slides that obviously most of us have seen, and it's really centered on Zambia. I think, like I did indicate, the issues of climate change are really real. And from 1960 to date, we've seen temperatures in Zambia increasing by 1.3%. Issues around the average mean rainfall has decreased by 2.3%. But what this also brings to the fore are issues around flash floods. And really, we haven't been spared as a city. I think the intensity really of these flash floods in the recent past has gotten quite intense, and it's really a wake-up call that we really need to start looking at. Overall, this poses really disastrous effects, more especially for us who are with the utilities, because on one hand you are juggling with trying to provide a service, to reach out to those areas where you are not providing a service. But on the other hand, you're also trying to juggle around issues of climate change. So really, the burden really gets just heavier, and it's something that we are trying to get to look at. Okay, overcoming the climate change challenge, the ICAM 2. I think obviously most of us know exactly what this ICAM 2 is, but for the few probably maybe that may not be aware of this ICAM 2. ICAM basically stands for Energy Performance and Carbon Emissions Assessment and Monitoring Tool. This tool was developed by GIZ, obviously in association with the International Water Association and obviously various experts in the field. It basically offers a holistic approach by considering all the stages of the urban water cycle. That is from abstraction of water till the final discharge back into the water bodies. And it can be applied to both centralized and decentralized systems. There are three main functions really that the tool basically does. The first one is assessment of greenhouse gases like methane, nitrogen oxide, but also it goes further to really look at the energy performance of a utility like ours. And lastly, it also really, once it does that assessment, it helps really in identifying potentials to opportunity and really improvements into reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The different assessments that can be done to inform the utilities interventions are quite various. And obviously, as a utility, you may need to know and assess and quantify your greenhouse emissions, which we have done. Like I did indicate, this is something that is new to ourselves. We've just recently ventured into it. And we equally needed to understand exactly where we are in terms of greenhouse emissions, looking at whatever we do, obviously from treatment up to disposal. Those are the three areas really that the tool does look at. When the tool was initially developed, I think the two focus areas was issues to do with water supply and issues to do with wastewater treatment. But with the current work that we're doing with GIZ, it brought in a third dimension, which is fecal sludge management. Like you get to see in my slides going forward, this is a dimension really that we needed to consider. More so especially that the off-site treatment in a utility like ours and mostly for the city of Lusaka, does not really cover most of the city. Currently, we are standing at around 14% with the off-site treatment. Most of the treatment is done on-site, and this is a mix of really pit latrines and septic tanks. So there was really a need to actually get to bring in this third dimension so as we could get a better picture of where exactly we are standing. So in terms of numbers, this is a quick snapshot, and like I did indicate, it gave us an initial understanding. There's still quite a lot of work that we still need to do. We still need to fine-tune a bit of the figures, but the initial snapshot really were these figures that we are looking at. And what we did discover is that the biggest issue really was around containment, and this is to do with our pit latrines, our septic tanks. This is where the biggest risk is sitting at, and that's where we got that number. So that is 217 million kgs of carbon. So this last slide, I won't really dwell on it much. Obviously, what we have gone further to try and do really is to bring in the sheet flow diagram, but also bring out how it looks like when you do when you impose the ECAM2, to just bring out at what stage what the numbers are really looking at. And this is what obviously has come out. And for those that obviously want to have a better understanding of the two, I know there will be some sessions at SUI where we can really get to interrogate these numbers and obviously the interpretation of both this sheetfold diagram and the interaction with ECAM. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. I think we have some time for questions for this last session. So please raise your hands if you have some questions to our speakers. End of the day, yes? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. My question is from Bisi. During your presentation, you mentioned some of the successful WASH urban models. So I just wanted to know which one of them are the successful models and how can we get access to them to study? Thank you.
Do we have another question? So we maybe collect 2, 3?
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. In terms of models, I mean, for each of those components I mentioned, in terms of the urban context, the small town project, we have quite a lot of nice models. The Ethiopia experience comes to my mind. We are actually, we have the case studies on them. I can share you the link, where we documented the small town success story in Ethiopia. That's one. For the slums, Dakar experience is the city. Working in the slums of Dakar, I think it's another very good model, which for us, what is waiting for is just to scale up, and has been accepted by the Dakar utilities for scaling up to cover all the slums in Dakar, other major cities. And of course, in the urban context, there's a model there, go to Aleppo, for instance. The model there seems to be working very well, which can be replicated in other cities that find themselves in such a context. So, I mean, we have quite a lot of them, but those are just the 3 ones along those 3 urban contexts we've mentioned about. Each of the contexts actually cover various things. Some are more of service delivery, some are more of enabling environment, while some are just the whole, covering both enabling environment and service delivery. We can have more bilateral discussion if you still want more information. Thank you.
Any final question? Oh, do you run?
Mine's just a comment for those that are looking at the climate change connection with sanitation. As I just came from the UN water meetings, and next year the theme is water and climate change, and there was a debate about whether World Toilet Day should have the theme of climate change or another theme, because they were having difficulty making the connection to sanitation. So those of you that are sort of moving that direction, there's an opportunity to plug into the task force that's going to be working on that for next year.
I would like to make a comment about it, because I think the connection is very clear if we really think about sanitation service continuity. We have been doing that. We haven't been calling it climate change. We shouldn't start doing something completely different, but really, really think about what it takes to have continuity of service across for everybody. You're looking at it because of the time.
Anyone else?
Okay, so let's close this session. I would like to thank all the presenters. I think we have seen really nice conceptual that we're really moving ahead, and some frameworks and new methods and tools for the urban areas. I think the connection in the end here with the climate and the working group 3 that I'm involved with are really interested. For example, with the mitigation side, I think most people have been, and the fund coming in has been on wastewater and centralized system, but it's really interesting to see this kind of evidence from Lusaka that actually the on-site sanitation systems are contributing to most to the emissions. So that's something that we really need to look at and see what will be the options, what can we do differently than to manage that in a good way. So thanks again for a really good session. Okay. Okay. So I will invite Arne to have the concluding remarks of the entire day.
I think, well, good. We've made it up to here, and I'm shocked that we're only about 10 minutes behind schedule. I don't know why that happened. And I think one reason is that we yes, Cecilia. If you are involved, then things work. But on the other hand, I think we as well, like in many of the other SuSanA meetings, we managed to throw too much at you, and we didn't sort of allow you too much discussions apart from the slots of the round tables, maybe, and in the breaks. And I'm already announcing with Madeleine soon that then after we'll allow for lots of discussions when we jointly go for dinner. But before we do so, I'm happy to invite those who will give us a few closing remarks. And the first is Roshan. It's not, we're talking about fossils and dinosaurs, howsoever. He's with the foundation since 7 years, before with UN Habitat, before with N4. Very happy to hear a few words from you to summarize the day. And I think if it's green, then yes, then you can be confident. Floor is yours.
My floor?
Okay.
It's very happy to be here again. I was involved with SuSanA since its establishment, like the 2007, right? Yeah. And with different hat, and finally I'm wearing Get Foundation hat. I really love to join this SuSanA session. Every time when I come here to Stockholm, my first priority is to join here. But this time I tried to come here at 7 o'clock. I was supposed to land here, and my flight was delayed. Then when I went to hotel, there's no hotel, and all mess up. So then I can come here only at 3 o'clock. I'm very sorry, but it's a very interesting session. I just joined, and the issue how SuSanA is evolving, bringing the new context and bringing into group discussion, like discussion forum. That's very interesting. Like when we, as a foundation, when we started to support the SuSanA in 2012, that time also it helps a lot, because the technology and the platform that what we were not able to create that, and SuSanA actually helped us to create discussion forum. With that discussion forum, people really understood that what actually we are doing on the technology front, and it was great help to also partners as well. For our technology partners also, they got a lot of feedback, and it's really helpful. And after that, we are really supporting SuSanA to grow, and we, since last couple of years, also we are supporting SuSanA to see the change management, how really SuSanA can grow and what kind of the structure it needs to be established. And I'm sure a lot of discussion happened this morning. I think there was a presentation. Sorry, I couldn't join that. I really want to get your thinking on that, how you are planning next several years again, and structuring the SuSanA setup, management, how it will go. And definitely we are willing to continue our support, but we really want to know that how you are going forward. And at the same time, now a lot of alliances are also emerging. For example, now you see like now we have Efficacy Loss Management Alliance there, CWIS coming up. So many things are coming up here as well. So we also need to be a little bit careful so that people will not be confused. So how can we make things happen so that still SuSanA umbrella, then there are a lot of other alliances coming, it should grow, because then it will really help us to focus on that sector. But at the same time, how we really work together is also going to be a challenge. And I'm sure challenge is always there. We will tackle that, but we really need to think on that as well. And I'm very glad that, all our colleagues, I can see like the World Bank, SNB, UNICEF, all are speaking the same language. So also all stakeholders are speaking the same language about the citywide inclusive sanitation. So the way how we are talking about more on the infrastructure in the past, now it's changing that shape. That's also very interesting to see. So I'm very grateful. At the same time, we have now also as partner like BMGF, how BMGF is supporting this entire thing since many years back. And we really like to establish a more partnership with BMGF, and we together to see this network to grow and function more effectively. And the main thing is we have still, a lot of professional academics are here working, but the language that what we are speaking, that's still, how can we bring that language to our real actor, utility, city authority, who really need to understand. Flow diagram, what we are developing, that tool is excellent one, because that really can easily understand. So this kind of tool will really helpful for the city authority. So we really need to engage them more, and that mechanism already developed. Now we have all these, South Asia we have, in India we have an alliance, and so all those things are coming up. This is very interesting. Now FSM toolbox is also completed. The FSM alliance will be hosting. All those things are coming, so it's just a matter of how we bring down to the real in the ground. That is, we need to really work on hard on that. So thank you so much. Congratulations once again to make this 28th SuSanA meeting. So I look forward to meet on 29th again.
Thanks, Roshan. Yes. And I'm as well happy and honored that I can invite the German ministry to give us a few closing remarks. Susanne Dorasil is heading the division which is responsible for the Secretariat. You can as well take the mic from me if you feel like. Or you can be, yes, okay, so then be,
let's see.
Okay. She was with the ministry since quite some time. She's heading the division that's responsible for us for maybe 2 years. Before she was at the World Bank, in the posting from the ministry. And thanks to the foundation for the help and support in the last few years. Thanks to many of you, but as well from the beginning, thanks to the ministry. So what are your closing guiding words that you are giving us, Susanne?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to Roshan first. Unlike him, I'm not in that sector for that long. And at the beginning, I thought everybody was expecting me to grow and to evolve, because everybody's speaking about SuSanA, and my first name is SuSanA, so I was always like, what am I supposed to do? So maybe that makes me fit for the network, but I'm just mentioning it because I'm from training, I'm a lawyer, and I've been more in private and financial sector work, but I noticed that when I joined the unit that there was a bit of a lack of financial on private sector work, which when sanitation we have probably more opportunity for private sector involvement than in the wash sector as such. But that's not what I wanted to tell you. Actually, I'm always a bit I feel a bit strange to do closing remarks when I haven't been at meetings. So I just listened to some of the presentations. So maybe I just want to share with you some few reflection I had when I was listening in here and talking to my colleagues. And also maybe coming from a bit more newcomer into the sector. What I heard is that we still have a huge gap in terms of inequalities there, be it poor to rich, but also in terms of gender. Like in any other sector, gender disaggregated data is missing. To have also necessary to have a good solid data framework for tracking success. And when I looked at the presentation, and coming from a political point of view, I think the messages SuSanA should maybe think about to bring into the world is not more about framework and plans you want to do, but rather on results you have achieved with certain models. Because these are numbers that are very convincing. I mean, SuSanA has been launched more than a decade ago, and I think it's a very success story. It's the largest network in sanitation. And you have solid representation in countries. You can show country cases. You have a wide range of partners and stakeholders involved from all kind of, from utilities, private sector, people that are affected or beneficiaries. So that would be a bit my advice. It would help us as well to get the sector a bit more seen and out there. One other thing maybe was, sorry, that's what the communication piece. And then when I was listening, what I thought was interesting when you were talking about behavioral changes, I was wondering whom you were addressing. Who should change the behavior? Should it be people in terms of, or kids washing their hands? That was mentioned, but for me it was also more like, how should the utilities be managed better? I mean, we have representation from the utilities. I hope we don't have to send all the mothers-in-law out there to scare them, but like the example, or is it the political economy? So far, we haven't really talked about the political economy in which you are acting. Why is the access to water so much easier to talk about? Sewage, and we've seen the numbers much lagging behind sewage systems. What kind of different political economy is out there? So making, and this, I mean, you're all the experts. You have to explain a little probably success stories, what worked, but also what is different in the sanitation sector than to the wash sector at large, or to education for that purpose. Because a lot of things I hear in kind of all sectors, and the specificities about the sanitation sector have to transpire. Because like in Germany, for instance, we had a lot of media attention when we had school kids coming, talking about how they made efforts to change behaviors within their schools. So that creates attention because it's a bit, or when you talk to politicians, what is they expecting? Where should they move? What do you expect from them, from the political system? So that for me, I thought could enrich this, but maybe again, maybe you talked about that this morning and I'm just saying, oh, why wasn't she here this morning? So that's some of my reflection on the climate change. I thought it was interesting, the numbers we've seen. We feel, I think there's a strong push to look more at wash sector in general and climate change. Next year we will see a lot of reports on adaptation, but lesser on mitigation in relation to the wash sector at large. And I think we have to tell the story. So if I hear the climate change, I mean, how we can save on emissions, or we see the potential numbers, but what does it mean? What kind of action would have to follow, so that I can transform it into a political kind of messaging. You know, we have the climate summit coming up, water sanitation absent. But cities, for instance, cities and city and local action is a big topic that is going to, and urbanization is going to stay with us. So maybe that's also a link we should explore a bit more in the future. increasing urbanization and together with climate change. So that's more from a political point of view and the messaging, because my task is to bring the water and including sanitation sector a bit more up to the political attention. And you're doing great work. We just have to translate it now into some more political messaging. So it's more encouraging from my end, and I'm here more to learn than anything else, but we have a whole week coming, so, and I hope we will have some more opportunities for interaction. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for all your inputs and your discussions. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Roshan. Thanks, SuSanA, for your words, which especially SuSanA and SuSanA will take it through the week and meditate on them and maybe discuss them. And now, Madeleine, it's again our joint show to close the... No, you have to come here, as always. There's no way out. Okay, thanks to the two speakers. Okay, and Franz is telling me first is evaluation. So let's see what's there. Where do I click? Let's try. Okay. Oh, wow. So put out your smartphones, connect to the Wi-Fi of the museum. You will not get out of this room until, maybe you have already done that. Then go to www.menti.com and enter the code 865483. And maybe that even the people remote can do, and they can say, I'm embarrassed that I'm not here. And maybe there are 5, now there may be 10. But as well, all these YouTubes will be available for those who will look at them later. And then there are 2 questions, and I think the first question that you will type in is, what did you like about the meeting? Type 2 words, and then we'll see a cloud of words coming up. And now, Franzi, back to you to see that cloud of words. Please. What is the number? Very good. It's 8.
No, wait, it will come here.
It will come here. Okay. 865483. I like hot. Learning is in the center. Interaction. What are these colors? Are they by chance?
The sizes mean
Yeah, keep on coming. 22. We are more in the room, so just get on your phones, eh?
There's which is MHM. Yes, I see that's 24. Wow. They get inspired. Maybe they said, I'll make a new one. Okay, family is there as well. Yeah, and we're a family. I think that's... I could have been the one typing that. That's true. Family exchange. Yes, okay. CWIS is in the one corner. Working group sessions. Okay, 45. Should we call it a day with the 45? Well, it's still moving. Okay, so then we give you a few seconds. 5 more? Already 50. I said call it a day. Now everybody's really saying that I will do that. And the top 3 are networking, learning, diversity, and inspiration. Thank you. I think that's...
No,
you one vote and that's it.
That's very democratic.
But there's a second question. I think we go to the second question. Thank you very much, and I think that's sort of your feedback to the meeting. I love it. Can we not lose it and do we have a photograph of that?
It is online.
It is, yeah, but online it's as well vanishing online, no? Oh, it's not vanishing. Okay. So I still can vote in the night?
Yeah.
Incredible.
okay.
Okay, good. Second question. And the second question, if I read it out, I need my glasses. The question is, it's there again. Do you have any improvements or suggestions for future meetings? Now, I'm very curious on that one. We never had that question. And, okay, only, and it's 864583, and here we go.
Yeah, because it's not the words. It's not worked out. It's interesting.
Hold the meeting in China, okay, point taken. It's running away. What are we doing now?
Yeah, no, it's okay. Don't get nervous.
No, I can't. Longer coffee breaks, two-way communication, so it's too much one-way, less presentations, more networking, longer coffee breaks, posters from participants to speak about their work. We had that idea as well, more time to discuss and interact. So, longer coffee breaks, less PowerPoints, more speed talks, more discussion, shorter bios. The working group meetings were good and ensure these are included. Continue with working groups, more too long. Well, it's always too long, sorry. It has never been different. More time for table discussions, more open discussion, adequate time for questions, right? Yes, I was foreseeing that. And exchange more time. Well, if we can exchange more time for this meeting from somewhere in the world, we would take that. Open windows, too long, okay, yes. Overwhelmed with excessive PowerPoints and less interaction, more time to interact. Okay, that's how we start the planning every year, to say this time it will be less and it will be more time. It has never been planned different, and we have failed every year. Okay, but next time will be different. Next time we will do it. And we have 51 feedbacks. So, and as I learned, they will be for always in the internet. So I think that's what we can do. Madeleine, any?
Yeah, there are some comments. As a dinosaur, then, I can just comment. It's very nice to see that everyone, there was a comment on the food. And the first one was actually on the food. And we had that in the first meeting also. They complained because we were offering vegetarian food. And now you see...
But it was just fish.
No, the first meeting, the complaints were we were only vegetarians. It was 2007. And I said, well, that's a climate institute. You have to live with that. That's how we serve food. Now, this year we were a little bit open, so we had twice. And now the demand is for vegetarian food. So it shows that we have, that the word has been coming aligned with the Climate Institute, which is nice. Okay, so we are on the same side. I think it's very, I think it just shows here how important our role is for networking and exchange of ideas and bringing the dialogue on sanitation forward. And in the beginning and for many years ago, we actually had almost 2 days sometimes, and then it was too long, but it gave some space for work and discussions during these meetings. So
I think in the beginning, often you made an extra day with project presentations in the evening before.
Yeah, something.
And sometimes the Friday something's happening, but sort of we squeezed it into one very full day in the last few years.
Yeah. And there are reasons for that, good and bad, but maybe you can prepare the meetings online, sending around presentations that will be the basis for working group discussions, and then people have seen the presentations and you go into the discussions.
Everybody is absolutely surprised that now is Stockholm Water Week, just coming from the summer holidays. Like we're surprised, but okay.
But yeah, scope for change, yeah.
I won't read out this. I hope you can read it. Otherwise, it's in that leaflet. It's sort of this. We're very happy that before the week started, we've already enjoyed with you such a great meeting. But there's lots to come: working group meetings, involvement in a lot of session, and so on. And ideas for the 29th meeting. That's something that we as well have as a ritual here to ask if. One thing is you can just speak out. We have to go to China. The other way is we'll revisit the question tomorrow in the core group meeting. So if you don't raise your hand now, but you have an idea, please talk to some of the dinosaurs and say, put that into the core group so that we have a list and I can have an idea where the 29th meeting is. That on this one, and then I think I should show that one. That is a last minute thing is that we had the idea, well, the SuSanA stand, shouldn't we have a mingle of all those from India or interested in India? And then somebody said, well, if there's an Indian mingle, shouldn't we have a mingle from all those from Latin America? And then they said, oh, and we miserably failed, sorry, for the UNICEF chapter. And, well, but that's the last minute things. But there are these mingles from the positive side of it. And come, join, connect. What we're doing here will happen again at the stand. And I think this I can already put, but then we'll, before we go into detail here, is that I think we have to say several thank yous, and I start saying thank you to you and the Stockholm Environmental Institute, which again helped us to make this possible here and hosting us. And I have to say thank you to Franzi, who were running the show with a team, and not only the GIZ team, but as well the SEI team, and many of you from different partners and so on, so that we could have this meeting. Thank you very much.
May I say something?
Yeah, you should, because that's how we do it. You interrupt me, I interrupt you.
I would like also to thank an invisible participant in this meeting that is rarely mentioned, but it is actually the Swedish International Development Agency that is supporting the Stockholm Environment Institute to work on sanitation and the work we do on sanitation. And I know also that I would recommend donors sitting here, Roshan and SuSanA, to meet with your Swedish friends and have a conversation with them as well.
Yes, thanks to SIDA, which as well is one of the key supporters from the beginning via SEI, so that SuSanA can happen. Very true. Is that what we have to do?
We have to thank everyone that came here.
No. Yes.
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 We have to thank you
Everyone,
all in the room, and thank you all the people who has been online. I know Elizabeth has been online from far, and she's checking up with us. So thank you, Elizabeth. We know you are there, and we feel that you are supporting us with good questions, and you're also critical questions sometimes, but that's how we keep SuSanA going.
Yeah.
And yes.
I think we can as well say thanks to the technical staff who is as always doing this videos, which will be available. Yeah. And I think with this, where are we going tonight?
Yeah, I want to say something more.
Please.
Yeah. So I want to say welcome you all to the SuSanA, the 30th SuSanA meeting in Stockholm 2020. We are here. We will host it somehow. Whatever we do, we'll manage.
Okay.
And so you're welcome here.
Thank you, Madeleine. So 30th is already done. 29th we have to identify.
Yeah, okay.
So formally, the 28th SuSanA meeting is closed.
Yeah, cool.
And as always, now fun starts, and this is the way where to go. And there are some seats reserved on that island, which is swimming on the lake.
Yeah, but I need some minor instructions.
Some minor instructions.
So this is a lovely Stockholm evening. It's 22 degrees and sunshine. Enjoy it, you know. That doesn't happen always, especially not on SuSanA meetings. And we
were lucky the last years.
We are going to this place, which some of you already know. It's right down this street. But it's a very busy place, and I promise that if we want to sit in this floating thing, we can only enter after 8:30. But there's a lot of space to stroll around, there's a lot of bars, and the place itself has a lot of tables, so you can just be very relaxed. It's a relaxed place. Can be a little bit busy because of this beautiful weather.
Yes, so we'll start somewhere in that place, and as soon the door opens to go on the island, on the water, we'll float the island. Yeah. Enjoy your evening. Great you were here, and have fun during the week.